believe we are on. So we say good morning, Sophia. Sophia, these guys are really excited to be back. I'm super excited to be recording this video for you. Okay, today we got a lot of stuff to do. We are hitting the ground running. You know, because before Christmas I told you we're a little bit behind. I have a plan to get us caught up. The plan requires, I think, 2.5 or 3 days of chapter 11. And then, boom, move on. Chapter 12 is half a day, because it is literally just a worksheet. You're going to read a page. You're going to answer some questions. That's it for chapter 12. I might talk about it briefly. I might not, because of our behindedness. And then we start chapter 13, which is about expansionism and really kind of some fun stuff. So I like the stuff that's in this chapter too, but we're going to talk about something called the Industrial Revolution today. When I say the word industry, if you're picturing something, what are you picturing when I say the word industry? Factories, right? Smoke pouring out of smokestacks, or maybe the image of the Cargill area where there's a whole bunch of different, that's industry. Hard-working men and women with hard hats on and stuff like that. That's industry. So when I say industry, I think that's probably the image that most of us picture. What if I say revolution? We should be able to picture this one. Revolution. What was the American Revolution? A war for what? For rights, for change, right? We didn't want to be British anymore. We wanted to be American. So a revolution is a major shift or a change in the way things are done. So an industrial revolution is a change in the way things are made. So all those factories that we imagine, we picture things being churned out of them. What are they making at Cargill? Well, all sorts of stuff, from ethanol that goes in your gas tank to glue to sweetener to animal feed. There's all kinds of weirdo stuff that comes out of that place. But they're making something. And they're always constantly improving the process to become more efficient or to produce more using less, to make things cheaper. They're always trying to come up with ways to make things better. That's what an industrial revolution is. America is about 70 or 80 years behind in the Industrial Revolution compared to Europe. So we're going to see it happen here, and then we're going to make some comparisons too. So think about this for a minute. 150 years ago, before the Industrial Revolution in America, where did all of our manufactured goods come from? England or Europe? And we sent back raw materials and resources like tobacco and cotton and lumber and stuff that we had a lot of. So we weren't manufacturing any of our own stuff. So our revolution is a little slow because we depended on everyone else to make our stuff. And part of it was because all the good ideas were somewhere else. Now I want you to think about this today. Where do we picture, when I say manufacturing and stuff in America, where do we imagine most of our stuff coming from? China, Indonesia, Vietnam, places that are sort of poorer countries because labor is cheaper. And that's partially true. But now we're finding out we got issues with that because all that stuff is stuck in the middle of the ocean and it can't get here, and so there's shortages of stuff. So maybe we should start manufacturing our own stuff. We'll talk a little bit about that. So we've seen several different revolutions. A factory system, as simple as it sounds, bringing the workers that produce something all under one roof. I'll explain how it worked before that. And then the idea of something called interchangeable parts. It's a good idea. It revolutionizes industry. So all those things are going to come into play really under the same heading of Industrial Revolution. Now, interchangeable parts being a really good idea. So if all of our stuff is manufactured in places like China, and a lot of it is, where do the ideas come from for the manufacture of that stuff? Are those Chinese ideas? Where'd the development of the iPhone come from? iPhones are built in China. Where did the knowledge for the production of the iPhone come from? Here. Not Blair, but America. So where do you think the idea for the production of your Chromebook came from? Here. It's probably built in China, but all of the cool stuff here. Who has the most high-tech aircraft in the world, fighter aircraft in the world? We do. So we come up with the ideas, and then it's easier for us to export the ideas to a different place, and they manufacture it, and then we bring it back. And it all has to do with the cost of goods. So that's the direction we're going today. You do have, if you haven't figured it out yet, there is a set of fill-in notes for Chapter 11, I hope. In Google Classroom, there's a folder that says 9 through 11. It's in that folder, so if you don't have that, get it, please. And we'll get a crack-a-lackin'. So, national and regional growth. Let's see. Grace. Is it intimidating when I show my teeth? Like if you're about to get attacked by a tiger, you're not supposed to show your teeth because they see that as a sign of aggression. Do you feel like I'm showing aggression toward you, Grace? You're not scared of me right now? Maybe you should be. What's the difference between nation and region?
Different spelling.
No. Grace. Different spelling.
It's like the United States.
Okay, so nation is like a country, and region is Does it have to be outside of our country? Can we have a region within the United States? Sure. In fact, what region do we usually associate Nebraska with? What do we call the area around Nebraska? It's usually called the Midwest. Have you heard that term before? So, yeah, that's a region, a smaller geographic area compared to a nation, which is a large geographic area. And we're looking at the early 1800s, which gets me excited because the mid-1800s lead us into the Civil War. And the Civil War is my favorite subject to teach. So it's coming. We'll get there eventually. 1793, factory machines replaced hand tools. It's a lot quicker. I'll give you the most super stupid, simple example that I can think of right off the top of my head, and there's lots of them. How many of you know how to sew? Well, good. There's more than zero. We have 3 people that raised their hands. When you sew, my 3 people that know how to sew, by hand or with a machine? Both? We got a machine and 2 by hands? Okay. I know neither, so I don't, I envy you, I guess, and I feel sorry for the rest of you because I know how it is. I don't know how to sew a button. Like if this button comes off of my shirt is going to go in a pile of stuff until we go to Grandma's house. And Grandma will sew back on. My wife can do it, but she won't. She'll just wait and say, Grandma will do it. So I don't even know how to do by hand or with a machine. Which is more efficient, by hand or machine? Definitely machine. While I was helping clean out my mother's house, getting ready to move my mom and dad into an assisted living, a lot of stuff has to go away. Because they're going from a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom house to a 1-bedroom apartment. Doesn't have room for all of their stuff. So we've got donate piles, stuff that's going to go to Goodwill, and trash piles. And my mother pulls out these 2 old quilts. They were my grandmother's quilts, so they're 100 years old. She says, probably just throw these away. You don't throw away 100-year-old grandma quilts, especially when your son is a history teacher. I'm like, no, that's not something that you do because Grandma made this. So that to me has some significance, and it was weird that my mother wanted to throw it away. So I took the time to look at it, knowing that it's a bunch of old ladies sitting around. They used to get together and hold quilting bees because they didn't have Xboxes or Netflix. So for entertainment, old ladies would get together once a week and they would sew and they would gossip. So all of the stitches on those 2 quilts were done by hand and they were nearly perfect. And it's amazing to think about how much time and energy those old ladies put into sewing that quilt. If they would have done it on a machine, it would have taken minutes compared to the hours. And every stitch on a machine is exactly the same. So when you look at an old quilt like that, even though those old ladies were really good, each of those stitches are just slightly different. They're slightly imperfect. So when we switch to using machines instead of hand tools and needle and thread compared to a sewing machine, it's not even really comparable. So once we start to develop machines to do the work, or a combine to harvest the corn instead of picking it by hand, it's not even a comparison. So that's what we start to see in the Industrial Revolution is the development of mechanisms, machines to do the work of man, producing large quantities of goods. What happens to the price of stuff when we can produce more of it? It goes down. So if we're looking at the number of hours that are put into grandma's quilt, I don't know. I'm going to picture 5 old ladies sitting around sewing on this thing and probably taking them, I don't know, 20 hours a piece. There's probably 100 hours worth of labor in one of those old lady quilts. If we did it on a sewing machine, I've seen sewing machines that, like, you just program it into the computer and you set the stuff up and it does it all. It takes minutes compared to hours. So what happens to the price of a quilt when you go to the store to buy one compared to what it would have cost in hours? It's cheap. So when we can produce larger quantities, the price of stuff goes down. So here's the story of how we start factories in New England. Remember, New England are those colonies that are kind of farthest north and most similar to the old country. So that's why they're called New England. America had a big problem, and we couldn't figure out how to solve it. We grew the cotton, but we didn't have any textile mills. A textile mill takes cotton and turns it into cloth. So we take all this American cotton that's grown in the South using slave labor, and we put it on ships and send it to England. In England, they have textile mills. They take the cotton and they turn it into cloth. Who do they sell it to? America. So it's our cotton. They made it into cloth. What do you think they did to the price because they had the technology to make it into cloth? Raised it way up. So America, we're sitting back thinking, man, it would be really nice if we had our own textile mills. Okay, thank you. So we really needed textile mills, but the technology was way beyond our abilities. We had super rich men in America that were spending all kinds of bank trying to figure out how to make textile mills, and nobody could figure it out. It was that high tech, sort of like building nuclear missiles. It's so high tech that there's only a handful of countries or people or places in the world that know how to do it. And the countries that don't have that technology would love to have that technology. So we needed textile mills. But the only places that they existed were in England, and it was so important to England to keep it a secret that they made sharing information about textile mills punishable with death. So if you're an Englishman that knows how to build textile mills and you're caught selling those secrets to Americans, you get executed. It's a big deal. It's sort of like selling American nuclear secrets to the Chinese or to the Russians. We don't want them knowing our secrets. That's treason. It's committing a crime against your own country. Well, this guy, Samuel Slater, was just a regular guy. He was one of us, a normal person, except he had a quality. He had an ability that probably would make all of us jealous. Life was kind of easy for him, like school, because he had something called a photographic memory. What does that mean? When you see it, it sticks. Like a photograph. We go back and look at photographs and it reminds us of something. When you're a little kid, you're like, wow, I was goofy looking. When you're old, you look back at your pictures when you were a senior in high school and you're thinking, wow, I was goofy looking. You look at anybody go and look at your mom's senior yearbook? Look at their hair. It was poofy, right? They had like a big poofy top of their hair. And you're like, why did you do that, Mom? Because that was normal at the time. So photos help us remember things. Samuel Slater's mind could do that. So when he'd see something, he'd kind of like take a picture of it, and it's stuck in his brain. So Samuel Slater went to work at a textile mill in England. He's just a regular guy. And he'd go to work, and as he's working in the textile mill, he's studying the works of the machines and how they function and what they do. And he's taking pictures with his brain. And then when he goes home at night, he writes everything down. And after 3 years of working in a textile mill, he'd been in all parts of the mill. He'd seen the works of everything. He'd seen every machine. He knew how everything worked. He'd taken pictures in his brain and jotted it down on paper when he went home. Loads up, hides his secret papers, catches a passage on a ship to America, gets to the United States. Samuel Slater is just a poor textile mill worker. He doesn't make any money. He has probably only enough money to get to America, but he has the key that Americans want. And he finds these guys that are trying to build textile mills, and they're not having any success because they don't know what they're doing. And he goes to them and he says, "Hey guys, I know how to build textile mills." And they're like, "Whatever, you're just some guy, you don't know anything." And Samuel Slater says, "Well, I worked in a textile mill in England for 3 years, and I got the plans, they're all up here." And these American investors are like, "Whatever." And Slater goes, "Okay, how about we make a deal? You put up the money to build the textile mill," because Slater doesn't have any money. "And whatever I manufacture, whatever I produce, you get half of. So all you're doing is investing in me. If I'm wrong, you lose a little money, but right now you're losing money anyway because you don't know how to do it." So these rich investors tell Slater, "All right, we'll give you a shot." So Slater builds the first textile mill in America in Pawtuxet, Rhode Island. So Pawtuxet, Rhode Island becomes kind of an important place in our history. It's on a small river. Why do you suppose they built textile mills on rivers or streams? Good answer, but no. Water powers the mill. So you guys have seen pictures of great big water wheels that are in rivers, and the water pressure pushes the wheel around. They didn't have electricity, so that big wheel is running all of the mechanisms inside the factory. So rivers were critical to the settlement of cities in America because that's the only place we could have factories. Think about the Cargill factory, the Cargill plant. Why is it right next to the Missouri River? Because they need a lot of water. They're sucking water in, filtering it, using it in their factory, and then they also use it to cool their equipment, and then whatever's left over, they filter it out and dump it back into the river. Hopefully not bad stuff that's killing people downstream. So Slater builds the first textile mill in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and he has a ton of success. So to America, Samuel Slater is a hero because we now have the technology that only the English had. So now we can take our own cotton, manufacture it into cloth, and sell it back to Americans for a much lower price. Woohoo! Samuel Slater in America is a hero. In England, Samuel Slater is a traitor. He's a zero because he stole their technology. Now, is he a great human? Well, let me explain to you. First of all, I don't know if I'd trust him. Second of all, listen to these statistics. Slater's first employees were 7 to 12-year-old females. Was Slater a creeper? Sounds like it. But that's not why. A spinning mill, a textile mill, takes little teeny tiny threads, and they have to be weaved together to make cloth. I don't understand it myself, but if you look at this, it's billions of little teeny tiny threads all weaved together. So why 7 to 12-year-old women? There's multiple reasons, but what? They had tiny hands. Now, I'm an old man, and I don't have big hands, but I have big, fat sausage. Hold your hand up, Mike. I don't have big hands, but look how tiny her hands are compared to mine. If I took a box of needles and dropped them on the floor right here, and I took another box of needles and dropped them on the floor right here, and I said, let's have a competition to see who can pick up the most needles the fastest without bleeding. And you have to bet on McKenna or me. Who are you putting your money on? Saying me would be a really bad idea because I have really clumsy hands also. So big fat sausage fingers that are clumsy. She's going to be able to pick them up faster. So if we're talking about threading a needle, I shake even a little bit. You're not going to bet on me being able to do it, but McKenna probably can because she probably has better vision than I do. She probably has better fine motor skills than I do. She's going to be able to do it. So 7 to 12-year-old girls were really good at the job. Why else would you hire young women? Not creepy.
They won't get pregnant.
That's a good answer. Nobody's ever given me that, but yeah, they're not going to have babies. And what's wrong with women having babies, by the way? You got time off, you know. Back then, not as much as today, but even Mrs. King is going to have a baby, right? When she has a baby, I think she's due in the summer, so she might not miss much school to have the child. But when babies get sick, who's more likely even today to stay home? Mom or dad? Mom. We always had the discussion at my house. I'm like, I can take the day off. I got plenty of sick days. And my wife's like, nah, I got it. She's just more likely to do it. I guess maybe it was easier for her or something. But so, yeah, women miss a lot of work when they have. That's a good answer. I really like that. I'm going to add that to my list. But that's not the answer I'm looking for.
Since they're younger, they don't have to get paid as much.
They're cheap. It's a secondary income. In fact, I just had this discussion the other day. Teacher pay for brand new rookie teachers. I'm still not used to that. It is not very good. Teacher pay for old teachers that have been around for a long time isn't bad, but it requires a lot of education and a lot of experience. I'm a lot more expensive than a brand new rookie teacher. You can hire 2 brand new rookie teachers for what you can hire me for. So would the school like it if I quit? Maybe, because they could replace me with someone a lot cheaper. In the process, you might lose some quality. Maybe not, because I know some old teachers that aren't very good at what they do either. But yeah, young people are cheap. When you go to Burger King or McDonald's, what do you think the average age of the workers is? Young or old? It's young, because you guys can work for $13 an hour. I can't pay all my bills for $13 an hour. So youth is cheap. And you're sort of forced to take those jobs because you don't have any experience, so that's where you have to start. If you're 14 and you want a job, that's about it. Those are the only places that are going to hire you are minimum wage type jobs, which minimum wage I think is $9. But there isn't any place that pays $9, right? Because right now there's a shortage of workers. So you guys are living at a good time when it comes to finding jobs, because literally if you want a job this summer, McDonald's or Burger King or Dairy Queen will hire you. They're short-handed. Nice. So that's good. But I think McDonald's, they started at 11 or 13 an hour, something like that. 15 an hour. And how much skills do you need to work at McDonald's? A little bit of people skills helps. Like you got to be able to talk to people and take orders. I can't stand when I go through the drive-through anywhere and they're like, hold on. I'm like, what? I can't understand you. I'm like, whatever, cheeseburger. Did you get that? Gosh, that's me nuts. So speak clearly.
Last week we went to a restaurant and my dad took me and the guy in front of us was talking to the garbage can.
What?
A guy or a worker?
I don't know. Somebody was trying to order and he realized it was a garbage can.
Nice. But he might have got more productivity out of the garbage can than some of the workers. Maybe it was a good idea. Maybe it was like a self-checkout and you just thought it was a garbage can.
It was a garbage can because somebody walked up and put trash in it.
So 7 to 12-year-old girls, because they have small hands and they're good workers and they're cheap. Now here's how it typically worked. If you went to work at one of Slater's mills, everyone in America in 1793 were farmers. And girls on farms kind of take up resources. So if you're a farm family, you want lots of children, but you need those children to be workers on your farm. So really, you're hoping for boys. Because your girls, once they get to a certain age, they're not going to work for you anyway. They're going to get married and they're going to go live with their husband and help their husband's family. So farmers around New England near these factories would send their young daughters, 7-year-old girls, 12-year-old girls, to work at Slater's mills in town. But there was no way to get them to town and back every day, so Slater built dormitories right next to his factory. This is brilliant on his part. And then he charged rent. So he pays them almost nothing, and then he takes part of their pay as rent. Can you imagine being 7 or even 12 and you're basically kicked out of the house? And then whatever money you do make, what are you supposed to do with it? Give it to help your family. So you were kind of like a slave to your father, being sent to work for someone to, yuck. Life wasn't good. In fact, Samuel Slater understood that those young women also needed food. So he built a store right next to his factory. Where are you going to go if you need groceries? To his store while you're living in his dormitory or in his apartments. So by the time you get paid and you pay your rent and you buy your groceries for the week, you have almost nothing left. So Slater is going to profit off of what he makes off of you working in his factory. He's going to profit off of the rent that you're paying to live in his apartment, and he's going to profit off of the groceries that you're buying. In fact, some cotton mills didn't even pay using money. They paid using something called scrip. That's like a gift card that only works in Slater Company mills. Can you imagine going to work at McDonald's and your only pay comes in the form of McDonald's gift cards? That'd be okay a little bit because you'd like to go to McDonald's, but if you want to go to Runza, they don't accept McDonald's gift cards. So it's kind of useless to you. I'd much rather have money and decide where to go to get what I want. So this guy was really a genius. And there were no child labor laws. Most of the young ladies that worked there made less than $1 a week early on. 55% of the workers were children. So the others were probably the supervisors that were giving orders to the children. You start your work before sunrise and you end after sunset. So, this time of year you're working shorter days, but in the summer you're working really long days. There's no air conditioning and there's no heat in these factories, and they're super dangerous. Factories today have all sorts of protections from the dangers posed by the factory. So if you work in a factory, you wear a hard hat and you wear eye protection, like safety glasses, right? Goggles or safety glasses. If you worked in a textile mill, you would wear a hairnet. This is a major problem in Slater's mills because everything is moving really quickly and it's weaving together these little teeny tiny threads. So a young lady with long hair, if you drop something and you bend down to pick it up and your hair falls forward and gets caught in the loom, what do you think happens? It scalps you. It literally rips the top of your head off. The skin on the top of it, because your hair gets pulled into it, like, and you can't stop it, and pretty soon you're laying on the ground and there's blood shooting out of the top of your head in a big old pool, and Slater's getting upset because you're staining his nice white textile cloth, and he doesn't care. Crap, dead. He can just take your body and put it in a coffin and bury it, because outside the gates of Slater's mill, there's dozens of more young ladies that want the job. And they're simple enough jobs that it might only take a day or two to train them to do it. So you're dispensable, disposable, and you're cheap. This is cruel. We don't have child labor laws that protect Fair Labor Acts until 1938. And some of us look at the child labor laws and we're like, this stinks, because I know a lot of you would like to have jobs, but you're just too young. When you're 14, you can start. When I was your age, at 12, I was washing dishes in a restaurant and working all summer for farmers and stuff like that. I had plenty of work to do. There wasn't time to play video games. The bosses were typically nice enough that if it was a hot day, they'd let me off at 2 so I could go to the pool and hang out with my buddies. But I also made $3 an hour. $3.35 was the wages when I started. So, but that's kind of because of child labor laws. Or when you do get a job at McDonald's, you're not supposed to be working the grill. I'll use Dairy Queen because I know their rules. You're not supposed to work the grill until you're 16, I think. Do they necessarily pay attention to those rules? No, because there's a reason Dairy Queen is closed right now, because they couldn't find enough workers. They didn't have enough workers to fill the shift. So they're supposed to be opening back up in February. Anyway, there's rules that protect you. I was cooking at the same restaurant I was washing dishes at by the time I was 13. Nobody cared. Were there rules protecting me? Probably, but I didn't care. I wanted to make money. Would you guys all break the law to have the job that you would like to have? Heck yeah, you would. Because as it is, if you're not old enough to go to work at one of those places, the only jobs most of you can get, if you're lucky enough, maybe your parents have something you can do, or you mow lawns, or you babysit. That's about it. You're kind of stuck. McKenna cuts hair at her mom's barber shop, so you can go there this summer and she'll cut your hair. They give her the old ladies that are blind, because it really doesn't matter. You just do like snip, 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 and they're like, oh, does it look nice? And you're like, yeah, you're gorgeous. How about this? Factory system. This is a new idea, and this is so stupid. Prior to the factory system, everything was manufactured by an individual. So I'm going to use an example. A cobbler. Does anybody in here know what a cobbler made? Shoes. Cobblers are shoemakers. So if I needed a new pair of kickers in the 1700s, I go into the cobbler shop. There's a hole in my soul. I go into the cobbler shop and I'm like, hey, cobbler, I need some new kicks. And he's like, okay, let me take a measurement of your foot, and you can come back in 2 weeks and I'll have your shoes. And I'm like, 2 weeks? There's a hole in my soul. How am I supposed to go 2 weeks? But every shoe was made specifically individually for my foot. It's a slow process, and there's only one man in our entire village that has the skills to do it. Now, a shirt, probably my wife has the skills to make me a new shirt, and I probably only need 2 shirts anyway, one for work and one for Sundays for church. So I got a nice shirt and a regular shirt. You would need 2 sets of clothes, one for school and one for chores. And that's all you would have. So things were different back then, but things that required less skill, like sewing a shirt, mom knows how to do that. Shoes, leather, fancy needles, heavy-duty stuff. So I go to the cobbler. Cobbler takes measurements. He goes to his pile of leather and he cuts out the upper part, which he has a template based on the size of my foot, cuts it out perfectly. And then he has a template for the sole, the bottom of the shoe, out of thicker leather, and he cuts it out perfectly. And then he cuts the laces, and they're all just the right size and the right length. Because if he does a crappy job, it's a direct reflection on him. It's sort of like if you fail my class, I take it a little personally. Because you shouldn't fail my class. It either means you didn't put any effort into it or I did a horrible job teaching you. That's really the only 2 ways that we have failures in this class. So then I have to look at each individual and I'm like, well, Taylor didn't try very hard, so it's her fault that she got an F second quarter. Or I might look and say, Taylor's a really good student. She has A's in everything else and she failed my class. Maybe it was me. And then I have to readjust what I do. So the cobbler does perfect work. But one day the cobbler's sitting around his shop and he's thinking, you know what? This laces, you just cut strips of leather that are this wide and 3 feet long, whatever. A well-trained monkey could do that. So he finds a housewife living on a farm out in the country, Wyatt. You're a great housewife, by the way. And he says, would you like to make a little extra money when the kids are napping and your husband's out working in the field? Well, Of course, everyone can use a little extra money. So here's a pile of leather. Here's some fancy shears. These are the best scissors that I can give you. I'm going to come back next Tuesday, and I'm going to pick up as many laces as you can cut. And for every lace that you cut, I'm going to give you a penny. It's extra money. You just do it in your spare time. So you can do it by the candlelight at night. And if you do a crappy job, I'm not paying you for that one. So now I pick up all those laces, and instead of taking 2 weeks to make a pair of shoes, I'm not wasting my time doing the easy stuff. Now it only takes 13 days. And then I think, you know what? I feel like there's a lot of people that have the same size feet as Mr. Bellamy. I wear an 11. Anybody else wear an 11? Couple 11s? Okay. So why should we measure everybody's foot if we could standardize the size of shoes? So I come in and the guy goes, I think we'll just call this an 11. Now there's a template for an 11. And then when Grace comes in, she puts her foot on the template and it says she's an 11. So he goes to the bin of pre-cut upper parts of the shoe and grabs 2 size 11s and starts sewing them together. Then there's 9s and there's 10s and there's 8s, all the regular sizes. Then the cobbler starts thinking, you know what? This is actually pretty easy. I bet I could get a well-trained monkey to trace around this template for size 11s on a piece of leather and cut them out. So another farm wife, a well-trained monkey, cut out these, and I'm going to come back next Tuesday and I'm going to pick them up. And then he does the same thing with the soles. Here's some thick leather. I just need size 11s this week. And by the way, shoes back in the old days weren't right and left. They were just straight. And then over time, they would form to your foot. So they weren't very comfortable to start. You had to really break them in, which would kind of suck. Because most of us, when we buy new shoes now, you don't really have to break them in. They're just comfy to start with. So you cut the soles, you cut the upper part, you cut the laces. Now, when Mr. Bellamy comes into the shop, he says, you're a size 11. I'm going to go get the 11s. I grab a set of laces. I grab a sole. Now, as the cobbler, all I have to do is stitch them together. So come back in 3 days. Whose labor was cheaper, mine or yours? The well-trained monkey farm wives were much, much cheaper. So I paid you a little bit, but you saved me a lot of time. Then all of a sudden, it strikes me. You know what? This is foolish. I spend every Tuesday driving through the countryside, dropping off materials and picking up materials. I could save a whole day if I just have you come into my shop 3 days a week, and you come into my shop 3 days a week, and you come into my shop 3 days a week. And by the way, what happens to the quality of the product the more they do it? The better it gets. The first time you do something, whatever it is in your job, if you're a hairdresser, the first haircut you give probably is kind of sketch. Any of you ever give a haircut before? Just your dog. Try it sometime. See how you can use Victor as your guinea pig. Anybody that wants to give Victor a haircut, stay after school today. Victor will be here waiting. Are you still working on your mullet? Anyway, it's probably not going to be very good, but after you've given 1,000 haircuts, can you do it with your eyes closed? Probably. Yeah. The first time I taught a lesson in class, I was really, really nervous and scared and probably even kind of quiet. Now I don't even really have to think about it. It gets easier over time. So bringing all the workers under one roof makes things a lot easier and a lot quicker. Now, I might even get so fast that instead of saying come back in 2 weeks, if I get ahead a little bit, I got a pair of 11s on the shelf over there. What happens to the price when I've increased productivity so much? The cost of the shoes goes down. What happens to the quality? It's going to actually go down just a little bit. Because even though my well-trained monkeys do a really good job at what they do, they're not as good as me. So there's a price to pay. But that's the factory system. When you go buy a car, did one person build that car? Or did it take hundreds of people to build that car? Factory system. So let's take a look at wages. This is 1825, so we've skipped forward a couple of decades. We're a little bit beyond making less than $1 a week with 12-year-old girls. But do some comparisons. A young boy working in a cotton mill, so these are boys, which probably make a little bit more than girls. Young boys were good at it too, because even though some of you are bigger than me, I'm going to bet that the majority of you still have smaller hands than I do, because my hands are done growing, even though I can't palm a basketball. So if you can palm a basketball, you probably have bigger hands than me. I'm close, but I can't quite. I maybe could do a girls' basketball. But anyway, boys in a cotton mill, $1 a week? What about a woman? Like $2.25, maybe $2.50 a week? So again, why would you hire boys or girls rather than a woman? Yeah, they're half price. It's a lot cheaper. A common laborer, so if I just need to hire someone that's going to work, do a job, laborer's worth $5. A carpenter, $7 a week. Does anybody know what a mason is? Close. Bricks. Mason's a bricklayer, so they build stuff. A mason, $8 a week. A machine worker, $8 a week. So what's the difference between a mason and a boy working in a cotton mill? Which one requires more skill? Masons do. Does that hold true still today? The higher skill that's required for a job, the more money you make? You think that's mostly true? Not always, but mostly. Yeah, it is. So do bricklayers today make a good wage? Do they need a whole lot of education? No. You learn how to lay bricks from another bricklayer. You go to work for Hans's dad. You learn how to do the job. You develop a skill. If you're good at it, you're going to make a lot of money. Do plumbers need a lot of education? Do they make a lot of money? Yeah, so the level of skill that you have still translates into money. So we tend to hammer into the brains of our children all the time today, and your parents are probably guilty of this too. College, college, college. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I'm saying there's other paths to making a lot of money and making a really good living. Probably every electrician in Blair makes more money than I do, and I've got 2 master's degrees and a lot of experience. So do they need a lot of education? Probably 2 years of college. So you can start looking at things like that. You don't have to go to dental school to make big money, or be a doctor, or be a nurse. You can make good money doing other things too. Now, this is one of my favorite things. I don't know why nobody thought of this before. The idea of something called interchangeable parts. Should we have a demonstration? I like demonstrations. It doesn't work very good for people that might be watching this on YouTube, but let's try something. Now, I don't want you to even look at this yet, but I'm going to give you a bowl, okay? Don't do anything with it except just let it sit there, okay? Let's see. I'm going to give you a bowl. I have a feeling that you'll screw this up.
David will screw it up too.
Yeah, you're going to screw it up too.
Adam will.
I won't.
Okay. I've given out 3 bowls full of parts. Can you recognize what this is a part for? Pens. So all 3 have parts to make 3 pens. So do you want to, here, you take those. Don't do anything with them yet. Does anybody want to place bets on who's going to be able to assemble their 3 pens the quickest, most efficiently?
Definitely.
There's enough parts for 3 pens in each bowl. This is the competition here. Anybody want to put a bet on any one of these 3?
Avalon. I will bet my shoe Avalon wins.
Your shoe that Avalon wins.
Look at your shoe.
I will bet
I got a couple of McKenna's and Avalon. Nobody has confidence. Okay, you know how to build a pen? Okay.
Just put that in.
So this part goes in this part, and then this part goes on top of this part. Got it? Those are your instructions. All right. Someone watch the clock. Let's time them. When you're done, say, done. Okay? And they have to fit together just right, like you would expect a pen that works to fit together. Ready? Go.
Done.
Okay, keep going. Avalon, you bet your shoe on Avalon, and she's not even. You just lost a shoe. Okay, what's the problem, Avalon? Why are you so stinking slow back there?
What?
It doesn't fit in.
Oh, it doesn't fit in. What problem did you have here? Because you were a little slower. What was your malfunction?
She doesn't know how to do it. This is the wrong end.
Okay, so if I purchase a pen and I'm using it and it does this, do we have a problem?
Yes.
So apparently that's not right. Oh, well, look at this. The thing doesn't even go down in there. Is this a problem? What about this? Oh, look, the cap fits perfectly. Oh, and this part doesn't fall out. It's nice and snug. So McKenna's just that much better at making pens than my other two guinea pigs?
She's more experienced.
I would have done that.
Her pens break
She's
all the
built
time.
While I'm talking, will you please take them all back apart so there's 3 parts for each one? So what happened?
Jaden lost the shoe.
Did they all have the same parts? No. Those two, I knew they were going to fail. They were set up for failure. So when you bet your shoe, I should have bet you back because I knew Avalon was not going to win. Their parts were from different pens, so they didn't fit. Interchangeable parts, look at this. I got Scripto, Bic, Scripto pens here. Each one of these, I'll call it a barrel for the pen, are exactly the same size.
Can we tell the other process this?
No. Each one of these things, the ink part, exactly the same size. Does it matter which barrel I stick it into? McKenna couldn't fail because it doesn't matter which one of these 3 she uses. They're all going to fit. And the caps, exactly the same size as all of the barrels. So she couldn't screw this up, whereas the other 2 couldn't succeed. That's what interchangeable parts are. It doesn't matter which part it is. So when Bic decides to make pens, they can make 1 billion of these. Then next week they can turn around and make 1 billion of these. And then the next week they can turn around and the factory can make 1 billion of these. And then the 4th week they can assemble them all. I don't know how they make pens, but that's pretty easy to imagine. Where does this come in extra super handy? Can you imagine if you're manufacturing guns for an army? If a gunsmith has to manufacture each gun individually, that means the parts on each gun are all slightly different. Once we start using interchangeable parts, all of the barrels are exactly the same, and all of the triggers are exactly the same, and all of the stocks are exactly the same, and they use exactly the same size bullet. It makes manufacturing weapons much, much quicker. Factories allow for that. So here's the difference. If we go back to the American Revolution, before the Industrial Revolution, so we're fighting against the British, and Wyatt and I are marching along, and he tells me a funny joke, and I don't look down, and I trip over a rock, and I fall, and I bent my barrel. It's crooked. And I know that we got a battle coming up later against the Redcoats, and I'm like, I can't even use my gun. I don't want to go to battle without a gun. Wyatt thinks it's funny, so he's laughing at me, and he trips over a rock, and his gun smashes down, and he breaks off his trigger. Both of us are out of action. We can't even fight because he doesn't have a trigger and my barrel's bent. We got to go to a gunsmith, and the gunsmith says, I don't have time to make you a trigger, and I don't have time to make you a barrel. We're like, and there aren't any extra guns, we're toast. But during the time of interchangeable parts, today, for instance, what are these? M16, is that the rifle they use in the military today? Does that sound right? So if we're both marching along, and I fall and I break my M16, and he falls and he breaks the trigger of his M16, and battle is about to start, first of all, we know there's extra parts somewhere, but if we're going to be fighting in 10 minutes, what's the simplest thing we could do? We can take those two guns and make one that actually works, because is his broken trigger, or is my trigger going to fit where his broken trigger was? Yes, because they're exactly the same. They're interchangeable. So if you really fall in love with the barrel of a pen, like you're just like, this pen fits me so nice, I don't want to ever switch, but it runs out of ink, so what? You just pull the ink out of another one that's exactly the same, fit it in, and you're set. You can keep your favorite pen. Maybe it's your lucky pen because you got an A in algebra using that pen. Can you use pens in math, or do you have to use pencils?
No.
Stupid math. They're so behind the times with everything. Nobody uses pencils anymore. Okay, last couple things today. I have no idea how we're doing for time. Thank you for being a failure. I appreciate your effort. Avalon, you're just pitiful. I don't even know how to describe it. You did notice that I gave the easy job to Taylor, right? I mean, McKenna. Taylor had a really easy job. She just sat there. How about these inventions? This guy named Robert Fulton invents a steamboat that could travel upstream. That means against the current, 150 miles in only 32 hours. That broke a record. 150 miles in 32 hours. Okay, math nerds, do some rounding and tell me, how many miles per hour was the Clermont's top speed? That's not hard math. 150 miles in 30 hours. What?
I don't know.
A little over 150 miles. If we round down to 30 hours, because that's just easier math, that's 5 miles an hour. How fast is 5 miles an hour? Is that fast? Compared to today, no. You get in your car, who's faster, mom or dad? Who's faster, mom? Dad, really? My wife is like Lightning McKay or whatever that speed car is. McQueen, yeah. Like, I think sometimes we can go back in time if she goes the opposite way of the rotation of the Earth. I think we can actually make up time. Like Superman when he flies around. You guys probably never seen that. Anyway, my wife certainly is faster than I am. I think she can get her car up to 190. Maybe. Not when I'm in there because I'll freak out. But anyway, fast for us in a regular automobile, yeah, 70, 80, 90 miles an hour would be pretty normal. We could expect that. So 5 miles an hour is laughable to us, but compared to 1 mile an hour before, or even slower, trying to row against the stream, this is like amazing. Peter Cooper builds the first American steam locomotive. What's a steam locomotive? Or what's a locomotive? Choo-choo, right? Here's the Clermont, Robert Fulton's boat. It's got 2 paddle wheels on the sides and a steam engine. Steam engine, how are we doing on time? Does anybody know? 4 minutes. Steam engines are super simple. So you have a firebox here. That's where you put wood or coal. So you've all seen old cowboy movies where they're shoveling coal into the train, right? Next to, or right above the firebox is a boiler. So it's a tank of water. Now, what happens when you put a pot of water on the stove and turn the stove on high and you put the lid on? When the water begins to boil, it releases steam. When it's releasing steam, what happens to the lid on that pot?
Rattles.
It jiggles a little, it rattles. because that steam has to escape. What would happen if we welded the lid onto that pot?
Exploded.
You just made a bomb, right? So a steam engine is basically a controlled explosion. You heat up water in a boiler, that steam is escaping. So as it's escaping, there's two pistons. It pushes a piston up because the steam is forcing it up. And as it's releasing that steam, it forces another piston down. And then it forces this piston up and the other piston down, creating a rotation that looks something like this. So then you transfer it by a gear to the wheel on the steamboat, and it goes this way, turning the paddle wheel. Super simple. It's the simplest of engines. There's no oil to change. All you have to do is refill water. That's also the reason why if you drive down the highway or you drive down any place where there's railroad tracks, notice there's a town about every 8 to 10 miles because locomotives in the old days could only go about 8 miles before they needed more water because they start to run out of steam. Pretty simple. That's the concept behind the first steamboat. The first steam locomotive doesn't look anything like a choo-choo train today. That's it. Now, the British had steam locomotives before the Americans did. By the way, this is kind of funny. Peter Cooper was the guy that built it. Notice the name of the company, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Company. I'll bet you've all heard of it and don't even know you've heard of it. How many of you have played Monopoly? You buy the railroads? A lot of people do. That's like a goal. One of the railroads isn't the Baltimore and Ohio, it's the B&O. It's the oldest railroad company in America. It's the Baltimore and Ohio. So you just purchased that railroad company. 1830. Major changes. We'll stop with that. That seems to be a good place for us to quit for the day. But yeah, all you have here is a firebox, a boiler full of water, and two pistons moving up and down, geared to the wheels of the locomotive.